welcome to episode number 266 of Bill Man the Sport Guys podcast. I'm your host, Bill Man the Sports Guy. Always remember, for the latest weekly news, the NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, college sports, WNBA, this is the podcast to be. First of all, we got some breaking news. The Florida Panthers have acquired Brady Tkachuk from the Ottawa Senators. That's right, I said it. Brady Tkachuk's a Florida Panther. The Ottawa Senators, in return, by the way, since the draft is next week, they got Florida's 9th overall pick, 25th overall pick in the first round, but they also get a 2029 first round pick and a 2030 second round pick. So let's just get started with this. First of all, for the Florida Panthers, this is a huge home run swing. Not only do you get Brady Tkachuk, who's still a very good player and can score goals in many different ways, but you also reunite him with his brother Matthew Tkachuk, who was part of their cup runs. And the Panthers, not only do they get him, but overall, this will easily help them become the number one favorites to win the Stanley Cup for the 2026-27 season. And, you know, Brady will fit really well in their top six line. And this is now going to be hard for the NHL because, you know, whose line do you put out when you're like in the dying minutes of the third period about to win a game, especially in the playoffs? So this is a very good move by the Florida Panthers side. And Bill Zito, yeah, Florida's not going to rebuild anytime soon because Bill Zito has admitted that he does not give a you-know-what about draft picks. Sure, they missed the playoffs, but I say at this point, expect the Panthers to be back in the playoffs. Now for the Ottawa Senators, you know, it stinks for the fan base, and I do feel pretty bad for them. Not only did they lose who could have been their franchise star player in Brady Tkachuk, but it turns out that Tkachuk wasn't willing to resign with Ottawa, and he wanted to leave. So, and the Panthers were the number one on top of his no trade movement clause on where he wanted to go to. And also, Elliot Friedman, a few weeks ago, was working on a Dylan Larkin piece on him wanting out of Detroit. And there was a couple other players, and I'm sure one of the players he was referring to is Brady Tkachuk. So I feel really bad for the Senators because they just got over the rebuild, just made the playoffs. Sure, they got swept by the Carolina Hurricanes in 4 games. And, you know, Brady Tkachuk still did well, solidly in the regular season. 22 goals, 37 assists for 59 points. And then, obviously, pointless in 4 games. So, it really stinks for the Senators. And I feel really bad for the fan base. But in the end, for the Senators, I guess it was better to trade him than let him walk for basically nothing. But for the Panthers, this is a home run swing. And it's going to be so interesting watching not only the Panthers dominate in hockey for the next decade and even for the rest of the 2020s, because the 2020s decade has basically been owed by Florida except for 2022 when Colorado won, 2023 when Vegas won, and this year in 2026 when the Carolina Hurricanes won the Stanley Cup. Yes, sir. All right. Always let me know your thoughts and opinions below on Twitter at BillManSports, Instagram at BillManSportsGuy, and here on YouTube at BillManSportsGuy in the comment section below. Next up, another shocking NHL news that came out. Jonathan Toews. That's why I'm wearing my Jonathan Toews Blackhawks jersey, because Jonathan Toews, after 16 seasons, has announced his retirement from the NHL. Jonathan Toews, we all know he played Chicago for most of his career, except for this past season when he played for the Winnipeg Jets. Jonathan Toews, career overall, 1,149 games played in 16 seasons, 383 goals, 529 assists for 912 points. And if we go to his career playoff resume, in 137 games played, 45 goals, 74 assists for 119 points. Then if we go to Toews' last season, which was in Winnipeg, he played a full 82 games. That was fantastic to see. 11 goals, 18 assists for 29 points. Not too shabby. So, Jonathan Toews was a very good player. Easily easily a top 150 greatest. Jonathan Toews, also Blackhawks legend, top 10 greatest Blackhawk ever. Jonathan Toews may not have been like a superstar offensive player if we put him to, let's say, Patrick Kane, Alex Ovechkin, Sidney Crosby. I can maybe now say Nathan McKinnon, Connor McDavid, to name a few. I mean, his career high in points was 81 that he set with the Hawks back in the 2018-2019 season. But overall, Toews was a really good two-way player, really good at face-off draw, always so solid offensively and defensively. So, and his career says it all. 3 Stanley Cups, a Conn Smythe Trophy in 2010, the Frankie J. Selk Trophy in 2013, Marc Messier Leadership Award in 2014-21, and also made the NHL Rookie Team in 2008, Olympic All-Star Team in 2010, and he also made the second NHL All-Star Team in 2013, also was a 4-time All-Star in 2009, 2011, 2015, 2017. And then, let's go to this. I mean it when I say Jonathan Toews is a Blackhawk legend. If we go to playoffs, Jonathan Toews is 5th all-time in points. In games played, he's actually 2nd. Goals, 6th. Assist, he is 4th, which is actually crazy. Then if we go to the career regular season points, it's no surprise because Jonathan Toews is 3rd in games played. He is 6th in goals, 7th in assists, and 6th in points. So we're obviously going to see number 19 get drafted up into the Raptors because Toews not only was the greatest Blackhawk captain, along with Dennis Savard in the entire history franchise, but no doubt, easily one of Chicago's greatest athletes ever. Not just for the Hawks, but in all Chicago. Alrighty. We do have a couple signings to talk about for the NHL. And jokingly, let the trade signings begin. Same for the NBA. All right. First signing we're going to talk about, Jason Dickinson, a former teammate of Jonathan Toews. Huh? Okay. Anyway, he does stay with Edmonton on a 5-year deal worth $4 million. $4 million, it's an okay, not completely awful, but 5 years, really? I kind of question that. And listen, I'm a Hawks fan, and the one thing about Stan Bowman, even if you go back to his years in Chicago, his player track record is and was all over the place. You know, a 5-year deal, $4 million, it still kind of shows that he hasn't fully learned when it comes to long-term extensions. I mean, I could say from Chicago. Remember when they first acquired Seth Jones in 2021, and then after that signed him to like a horrendously bad 8-year, $9.5 million contract? Yeah, pretty bad. Also, Brent Seabrook, very thankful for 7 for all what he did in the Stanley Cup playoffs, but let's be honest, the 8-year, $55.5 million deal that they gave him after the Cup in 2015, not a good one. That was pretty bad. And we could even go from the player trades. Remember the Artemi Panarin for Brandon Saad trade? How about when Chicago traded Dustin Byfuglien after the Stanley Cup final run in 2010? How about trading Dave Bolin? How about trading Teuvo Teravainen before ultimately coming back to Chicago? Now, he has obviously done a few good ones he's done is obviously re-signed Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane to their same 8-year, $10.5 million deal. He has also done okay at drafts, drafted Teuvo Teravainen, Andrew Shaw, Brandon Saad. To name a few, I could go on. He also acquired Marc-Andre Fleury for free. That was awesome. He also signed Artemi Panarin after the Cup in 2015, and Panarin, boom, became a star player like that. So, yeah, $4 million is not bad, but I question the 5-year deal, and this is just another of Bowman being all over the place. The next one, Bobby McMann is going to stay with Seattle on a 6-year, $5.75 million contract. Well, that's the AAV. So, Bobby McMann, I think this is actually a solid contract. You know, I don't know if there's no movement clause. Somebody comment below if there is. But honestly, good for him. Bobby McMann is just a really solid, good top 9 forward. Can score goals, throws the body around, and he's just a really solid, good hockey player. So I actually like this contract from Seattle. But the other thing with Seattle is they need to figure out if A, are they going to actually rebuild, or B, are they going to contend? This is also another mediocre, but I'm hoping Seattle can finally make up their mind. Alrighty. We do have an NBA signing to talk about. It is the Phoenix Suns have re-signed Colin Gillespie on a 4-year, $48 million deal. You know, Gillespie, I think he did average 12.7 points per game for the Suns. The more he grows, the more I think he'll become a solid player. While the Suns have been stuck in mediocre after their NBA Finals run in 2021, so I think Phoenix needs to decide, are they going to rebuild or are they going to contend again? Because I feel bad for Devin Booker, but in the end, I think re-signing Gillespie, it's a fine contract. I honestly don't have much to say after that. All right. Oh, yeah, we do have another hockey trade to talk about. I kind of forgot, but we're going to talk about it. The Toronto Maple Leafs, they made 2 trades actually this week. So why don't we go through them? The latest one they did was acquire Darren Radish, defenseman from the Tampa Bay Lightning, and at the same time signed him to an 8-year, $8.5 million deal. So I was confused, but the more I slept on it, the more I think this should be an okay move because the Leafs cannot afford to go another rebuild. The Leafs obviously rebuilded, had young guys like William Nylander, drafted Austin Matthews, drafted Mitch Marner, Morgan Riley was still there. So the point is, I think this is the Leafs. They need to get back to contention. They're obviously going to take Gavin McKenna with the first overall pick, unless if he does something that scares the Maple Leafs away. But in the end, Darren Radish became an underrated defenseman after putting on a Tampa Bay Lightning uniform. And, for the Leafs, I think adding Radish as a right-handed shot defenseman in your top 4, pretty solid move. I can't really complain about this one. Then the 8-year, $8.5, we all know he was going to get paid, and man, did that guy got paid. Woo-wee. And it's an okay deal. I don't know if I would say it's a good one, but I won't say it's a really bad one. So overall, not bad by the Maple Leafs. Then the next Maple Leaf trade we do need to discuss, which is the Maple Leafs have traded goaltender Jesper Woll and defenseman Simon Bennett to the Philadelphia Flyers in exchange for Samuel Harrison, Emil Andre, and a 2026 third-round pick. So the third-round pick, draft picks are draft picks. Andre is a goalie. Good goalie. New change, new scenery. Same with Joseph Wall. New change, new scenery. But Harrison, I think he'll really be a fine player. I don't really know too much about him, to be completely honest. Simon Bennett, the Flyers need a young, tough D-man, and I think Benoit will help. As for Joseph Wall, in the end, I think he'll be a fine goalie for the Flyers. But this will basically recap today's episode of episode 266 of Bill Man the Sport Guys podcast. I'm your host, Bill Man the Sports Guy. Always remember, for the latest news of the NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, college sports, WNBA, this is the podcast to be. I hope you all have a good week. Stay tuned for episode number 267. Peace.